Are you sure you want to do this? Landon, you hate camping. My girlfriend sat cross-legged on our bed, watching me cram things into the hiking backpack my foster dad had given me for my birthday, the year he passed away. The plan had been for us to spend 1 week and every summer hiking through the mountains together. I wanted to get more fit, and we both wanted to spend more time with each other. So in March of that year he gave me this great backpack for my 22nd birthday. And then he went and died in June, 3 weeks before our first trip. To be honest, I had been so mad at him for going and dying on me, and I had thrown the backpack in my closet and forgotten about it until now. I had never been crazy about camping. I'd only wanted to spend time with Hank. I looked back at her and said, "Yeah, I'm sure. And it's not really camping. More like..." She smirked. "A rescue mission?" I chuckled, but there was a deep pit in the bottom of my stomach as I said, "Yeah, more like a rescue mission, I guess." My best friend Patrick had gone on a solo backpacking trip a few weeks prior. He started in Grand Teton and was supposed to be back by now. He'd been using his emergency sat-nav device to send me the occasional message. And as time had progressed, his messages were only getting weirder, harder to understand. I got my last ping for his location a few days ago. Then he fell off the map. So I and a few other people were heading out to look for him. We were all going to start within a few miles of his last location and hike through the area to see if we could find him or any trace of him. The next morning, before the sun even had a chance to rise, I piled into my friend Max's Jeep. Tyler and Cody were already there, and he drove us out to the middle of nowhere. The four of us were quiet as we sipped gross instant coffee out of a thermos and listened to the early morning talk show hosts on the radio as they discussed some video that was trending. When we got to the parking spot below the first hiking trail, we all got out, collected our things, and made sure the sat-nav devices Cody had ordered online were all working. They were, and he explained that in order to message each other, we would have to keep our phones on, charged, and connected to the device via Bluetooth. We had all brought small, solar-powered battery packs, so we didn't expect to run into trouble there. He also told us, very begrudgingly, that he had bought the monthly subscription so we could send as many messages as we needed to. We all thanked Cody, then split off in for separate directions and started hiking. My girlfriend, Harissa, had been pretty upset when I told her we were going to split up to look for Patrick. But we all felt like it would be the best way to cover as much ground as possible. The Park Service had told us they would send people out to look for Patrick. Only after his family filed a missing persons report. Patrick's mom was too busy trying to score meth to make that happen. So we decided to take matters into our own hands. The first morning was beautiful, and I told myself that I was stopping every hour to admire the scenery, not to catch my breath. By mid-afternoon, I felt like I had found my stride, and I was starting to enjoy myself. I felt a little weird, like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing in coming out here. Cody, Tyler, Max, and I kept in touch as best we could without wearing down our batteries, letting each other know how far we had made it, and that none of us had found any signs of Patrick yet. I made the mistake of pushing myself to keep walking even as the shadows grew longer, and I wound up having to set up camp in the dark. I was frustrated and kept making small mistakes trying to put my little one-person tent up. I gave up and decided to look for firewood instead, promising myself I would plan my day better tomorrow so I would have time to set up my tent. I built my fire, cooked my dinner, then made the comfiest sleeping spot I could, curled up on my sleeping bag. I lay there, staring up at the stars through the tree branches, until exhaustion overtook me. I hadn't realized I'd fallen asleep, until I woke up in the middle of the night needing to pee. I rolled over, getting ready to push my stiff body out so I could find somewhere to relieve myself, when I saw a dark shape hovering around the edge of my campsite. It looked like a Halloween decoration at first. As weird as that sounds, it was a vaguely human shape, but it was hunched and slightly more animalistic. I laid on my side, staring at it, until it melted back into the treeland and became just another shadow. I got up then, making sure to go in the opposite direction, and tried to convince myself that it was just a shadow, maybe some kind of animal, some totally normal animal to find in the woods. But then I managed to convince myself to go back to sleep, and I woke again to the first rays of sunlight poking me in the eye. The first thing I did was check my messages on my sat-nav device. Cody had sent us a message in the middle of the night about how creepy the woods were alone, and Max replied a few minutes before I woke up, saying he had felt like he was being watched all night. I remembered the strange shape I'd seen in the trees, and felt a shiver work its way down my spine. It was probably just shared anxiety between the four of us, worrying about our missing friend. But it was still hard to shake the feeling that something was watching us, following us, and we didn't know what. I felt that cold drip of fear on my spine again, and did my best to shake it off. The sun was warm and bright, and despite my sore muscles, I was looking forward to the day's hike. I packed my things, ate a protein bar, then sent a message to the group letting them know I was heading out and which direction I was going in. I got 3 messages back from the group with the directions they were going, and a reminder from Cody not to kill our batteries. Zach sent a message back that said, "Shoot, should I stop using the sat-nav to torrent videos then?" Cody didn't send a reply back, and I knew he was rolling his eyes and laughing. I started walking, and despite my fatigue and nerves I couldn't help but notice how beautiful it was. The pale yellow sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a patchwork of green and yellow onto the rocks and path in front of me. It was actually kind of mesmerizing, and I found myself beginning to understand why Hank and Patrick liked it out here so much. Thinking about my foster dad reminded me I had already lost one person, and it gave me renewed energy to find my best friend. Patrick had been there for me in the years since losing my foster dad, and I knew I couldn't have made it this far without him. An idea occurred to me, and I stopped walking, then pulled out my phone and my sat-nav. I pulled up the messages I had been getting from Patrick, and sent a message to his sat-nav number. I knew it was unlikely I would get anything back, but I really felt like I could sense his presence in the forest. I slid my technology back into my pack and kept walking, picking up my pace as I did. We had a lot of ground to cover, and I knew 4 people weren't enough for a search party, but we had to try. I hiked for hours, sometimes going off trail so I could explore an area I thought Patrick would have liked, other times stopping and just calling out his name. Around mid-afternoon I stopped to make a real lunch, rather than just tearing into another protein bar, and allowed myself a peek at my sat-nav. Nothing. I tried to swallow my disappointment along with my flavorless freeze-dried food. I ate and got back on the trail, but doubt had started to creep in. We were probably never going to find Patrick, and I knew that. Teton was huge, wild, and kind of dangerous. If we hadn't heard from him in a few weeks, we were probably never going to hear from him again. I found a place to make camp early enough this time, so I could put my tent up and began to settle in, trying not to plan my best friend's funeral in my head as I did. I made my fire and settled in, wishing I had Netflix to take my mind off things. I woke up again in the middle of the night to the same shadow hovering over my campsite. This time it was holding something that cast a light on its face. The light was dim, like it was holding an old Game Boy, just barely lit up in the darkness, so I couldn't make out the features very well, but I could tell it had an almost human shape. I say almost human because every detail I could make out was just a little wrong. The eyes glinted like an animal, seeming to open and close independently of each other. The mouth seemed to stretch back too far, and the body was hunched and straight in all the wrong places. But for some reason, I didn't feel at all threatened by it. Whatever I was looking at didn't seem to mean me any harm. It stared at me for what seemed like a long time. Then it was gone. Once again, I drifted off into a fitful sleep. That night my dreams were stranger than usual. I found myself walking through the woods, trying to find pieces of myself. Every time I would find one piece, an arm, a hand, I would realize I was missing something else. It was like trying to hold water in a sieve. I couldn't seem to keep myself in one piece. When I woke up in the morning, it was with the distinct feeling that I had lost something I would never find again. As I got ready, I found myself checking my pack and pockets over and over, convinced something important was missing. I finally managed to convince myself I had everything I had started out with, and began breaking down my campsite. Before I left, I sent a message out to the group, and realized I had received a message in the middle of the night. It was from Patrick. I sat down hard on the ground. As I opened it, feeling some strange mix between hope and fear fluttering around inside me. But the message was nonsense. It was long, as if someone had been trying to send me a message, but couldn't quite remember how to make words with the keypad. At the very end were just a bunch of hand-typed emoticons like we all had to use back in the early days of cell phones, including one Patrick had taught me back in middle school. It was a complicated shrugging, smirking emoji that I had never been able to get the hang of. and he would text it to me all the time to mess with me. I stared at the message in horror. I had no idea who, what, had sent it to me, but I was reminded with an awful jolt of fear of the creature that had been watching me the night before with its face half lit up. I held the sat-nav device under my hand and studied the faint light it emitted. Something had Patrick's sat-nav, and it was following me. I spent the first 3 hours of my day debating whether or not I should message the rest of the group. I wanted them to know what had happened, but there didn't seem to be any way to express what I thought was happening without sounding like I had lost my mind. As the day wore on, I started to doubt myself more and more. I must have just dreamed mystery figure, and maybe the text I got from Patrick was just a jumbled mess of messages he had attempted to send me that had failed to go through. It was a lame explanation, even for me, but it was all I had, and I desperately needed something that felt more logical than some creepy shadow figure sending me nonsense messages from my missing best friend's phone. That night, I sent a message out to the group that said, "Hey guys, I've got a bad feeling about Pat. I got a weird message from his device today. It seems like maybe an animal got a hold of it or something." Lame reasoning, but the best I could come up with. I didn't want to leave the other guys in the dark about the message in case it meant something, but I also didn't want to tell them I was pretty sure I had gotten a message from a shadow creature that was stalking me. Slowly over the course of the next hour, replies trickled in. The guys agreed that it was probably hopeless, and time for us to call it quits on our search. After an hour of back and forth, we agreed to give it 2 more nights. If we didn't find any sign of him tomorrow, then we would turn around the next day. I agreed that was fair enough, even though the thought of giving up made me feel sick to my stomach. I made my campsite, sent a message to Patrick letting him know we were still looking for him, then made dinner and went to bed. I had more dreams of wandering through the woods, but this time the forest was like a house of mirrors. I kept running into reflections that seemed to be showing me bizarre creatures instead of myself. Occasionally I would see a glimpse of myself, but wrong. Like all my features were there, but in the wrong places. I woke up feeling worse than ever, then realized how late in the day it was. Dark storm clouds had gathered overnight, so instead of waking up to the morning sun, I had slept in. I rushed to gather up my things and break down my campsite as I cursed on myself for not using every available minute to search for my friend. I checked my device and saw that the other guys had experienced the same problem, and were sharing their concerns about the storm clouds. Cody suggested calling it early, saying he didn't like the look of those clouds, and I insisted we keep going. Looking back, I was so desperate to find Patrick, I guess I was willing to risk our lives to do it. The other guys agreed, and we kept hiking. But as the day wore on, the storm clouds got thicker and darker. By mid-afternoon, a steady rain had begun, and by evening it was pitch dark. I realized, too late now, that we should have turned around that morning. I sent a message to the group, saying I was worried about flooding and going to turn around now to see how far back I could make it, and the rest of the group agreed. We were too far up the mountain to feel safe now, but I hoped I could at least make some good progress. Besides, hiking felt safer than sleeping in the downpour. It wasn't long before my sat-nav lit up with a warning about flash flooding, and I remembered that it could contact emergency services. I called and let them know my friends and I were about to be caught in the flood, and they promised to send out a helicopter. On a whim I said, "There's 5 of us. Me, a guy named Cody, a guy named Zach, a guy named Max, and my best friend Patrick." The operator promised to look for all of us, and I hung up feeling relieved. It was a little white lie, mostly true, and maybe now someone would actually take Patrick's disappearance seriously. I kept hiking, but by now the rain was coming down in violence, angry torrents, and my desire to get to safety. I began moving too recklessly, and before I knew it, I had lost my footing, and I was swept away by a tide of water that seemed to come from nowhere. I felt my body being buffeted by the wind and water, yanked left and right, and beaten against anything I came in contact with. I knew enough about flash floods. I was dead, but then I felt something wrap itself around me, strong arms sliding beneath my armpits, something bony against my back, and then I was lying on dry, okay, not so dry earth, coughing up water and gasping for air. I looked up and saw Cody 100 yards away from me, also lying on his side and coughing up water. I turned around and saw Zach, a little further away, and next just past him and to the right. Somehow, by some miracle, All three of us had made it to the same point at the same time. We were all in our own little safe spots, out of reach of the water. I ran to Cody first and made sure he was okay. Then the two of us picked our way carefully across the rocks until we made it to Max and Zach. We huddled there together for the rest of the night, trying to make sense of what had happened. Zach had nearly stumbled off a small cliff he wasn't able to see in the torrent of rain, but a mystery hand had pulled him back. When he got a sense of where he was nowhere close to where he thought he had been when he fell. Max shared a similar story. He had gotten knocked over by a falling tree branch, but someone had pulled it off him and walked him to safety, staying just outside his line of sight the entire time. Cody had also been swept away by the current, and someone had pulled him from the water too. None of us had gotten a good look at our rescuer, but somehow they had managed to get us all to a safe place. And for most of us, we seemed to be miles away from where we had been when we fell. Dawn was just beginning to challenge the darkness of the clouds when rescuers found us. They took us to a hospital, where we all got checked out to make sure we were fine. Aside from some bruises, no one was seriously hurt. They apologized for not finding Patrick along with us, and said that unfortunately he probably died in the flash flood if he was out there at all. I checked my sat-nav again before leaving the hospital, and saw that one message had come through since we were rescued. I showed the message to the other guys. It had come from Patrick's device, and all it said was, FRINs. I still don't know how to explain it. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. People mysteriously survive dangerous stuff all the time. But I can't shake the feeling that Patrick is still out there, and maybe he was the reason we survived. A few days later, I got a call from the park services. They told me they had recovered Patrick's cell phone, which they found abandoned and deep in the forest. They were able to pull some voice notes from it, and I was listed as one of his emergency contacts. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear them. Part of me wanted to forget the whole experience, to leave it behind. A curiosity, or maybe loyalty to my friend, pushed me to listen. They sent me the files in an email. It was late afternoon when I finally settled into my small living room, the kind of quiet that only comes with isolation filling the space. I stared at my laptop screen for a long time, hesitating. I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing on me. Finally, I clicked on the first audio file. I plugged my headphones in, taking a deep breath, half hoping that what I was about to hear would bring some kind of closure. The first audio file opened, and as soon as I heard Patrick's voice, it filled me with a sense of hope. Like maybe Patrick's words could help me understand what really happened. His voice was steady at first, full of enthusiasm, talking about the adventure. But as I continued listening, I could hear it shift, from confidence to confusion, then to something I could only describe as acceptance. There was a heaviness in his words that felt almost tangible, like he knew something was coming but couldn't articulate it. Here's what he said. June 29th. I've always wanted to do a massive solo hiking trip. I see these videos all the time from people who backpack across the United States, or through the whole Rockies or something. It's amazing, and I've always wanted to do it myself. I decided to give it a shot, but starting out in Grand Teton, people hike through there all the time, and while there are definitely some dangers, it seemed like a decent place to get started. Don't get me wrong. I've done all sorts of solo camping and hiking before, so it's not like I'm brand new and trying to start out on hard mode. I gathered up my supplies, told my friends I would be in touch, and then I was off. I took 3 months off work. You have no idea how hard it was to swing that, and asked my sister to stay in my apartment until I got back. She's been wanting to move out on her own for a while, so I figured this would be a good way for her to see what living alone is like. The first week was awesome. I went at whatever pace felt right, mostly trying to push myself to walk as far as possible, but occasionally just going at a leisurely speed that allowed me to take in my surroundings. Anyone who says Wyoming is ugly has never been to the right part of Wyoming. It may not be Washington, mostly trees and mountains, but it's nice. Things started to get weird out here though. At first, when I would run into other hikers, they were friendly, happy-go-lucky people. But the longer I've been out here, the more suspicious everyone seems to get. I keep hearing other hikers talking about something in the woods, and warning each other to be careful. I'm keeping my eye out for anything dangerous, and trying to keep in touch with my friends. July 1st. There was something in my campsite last night. I don't know what, but I woke up and found footprints all over the place. They look almost human, Like I would imagine Bigfoot's tracks would look, although they aren't huge. They were going back and forth like someone was dancing. I also found trash. Like a raccoon had been raiding other people's campsites and dragging its treasures over to mine. I found another couple who were hiking and asked if they noticed anything weird around their campgrounds. They said there were footprints, and something had gotten into their food. I suggested bears, but they said they think it's a homeless person. I guess that makes sense. July 8th. I know this is going to sound weird, but I swear the days are getting longer. I don't really know how to explain it, but each day seems to be stretching out farther and farther. Sometimes by the time I go to sleep at night, I feel like I've been up for weeks. I and other hikers are still reporting the weird tracks around our campsite. Last night I saw that they went around and around my tent, but I didn't wake up in the night. I sent a message to Landon letting him know what's going on. July 11th. No weird tracks around my campsite last night. I'm thinking it really was a homeless person. Hopefully they're doing okay. It can be dangerous out here if you don't know what you're doing. July 15th. I'm having weird dreams. Actually, I've been having the same 3 weird dreams over and over. In the first dream, I'm walking through the forest, picking up pieces of myself. And I don't mean stuff from my pack. I mean like fingers and eyeballs. I'll be walking along, feeling like I lost something important. And then I'll see my foot on the path. I'll race forward and grab it. But as soon as I have it, I realize I'm missing something else. I always wake up feeling like I'm missing some crucial piece of myself. In the second dream, I'm walking through a house of mirrors. Like a normal house of mirrors, this one looks like the forest. And I can tell it's not, if that makes sense. Like if you decorated a house of mirrors to look like one of those weird jumbo restaurants my buddy Max is always wanting to go to. Every time I look in one of the mirrors, it's like it's showing me someone else. I see other hikers I've run into out here, but they always look startled or terrified. Sometimes I see myself, but all my features are in the wrong places. At one point, I saw myself, and I looked perfectly normal, except I was missing my eyes. In the space where they should have been, there was nothing. Then I lifted my hands, and showed that I was holding my eyeballs, one in each hand. In the third dream, I'm a tree in the forest. I can feel myself growing up from a sapling, watching as hikers and animals pass me by. Then my physical self approaches my tree self, tell me how to describe a dream without sounding insane, and my physical body lays down at the roots of the tree. The roots come up from the ground and wrap around my body, pulling me into the earth to suffocate. But instead of feeling panic, I just feel peace. Every time I wake up from the third dream, I feel kind of sad, like something precious was taken away from me. I know that sounds weird, but it makes me think that just being a tree in the woods might be really nice. July 22nd. I lost something on the trail. I'm not entirely sure what I lost, but my pack feels too light and I know I must have dropped something. Damn it. I'm going to have to retrace all my steps until I find it. July 24th. I'm not sure why, but people have gotten so much less friendly out here. I decided to retrace my steps at least for a day or two to see if I can find what I lost. Whenever I pass other hikers, they either act like they can't see me, or they skirt around me. I'm sure I look kind of homeless now, after more than a month of not shaving or getting my hair cut or taking a shower, but it still hurts my feelings. July 29th. I gave up looking for it yesterday. I hiked the same trails over and over, asking everyone I came across if they found something I dropped. I've gone over the inventory in my pack a dozen times a day, but I still can't pinpoint exactly what's missing. I know something is, and I'm not sure what. I have to stop thinking about it. If I keep obsessing over whatever it was I lost, I'll go insane. August 8th. I'm more comfortable sleeping without a tent. I realized it just makes me feel so much closer to nature. I could stay out here forever. August 12th. I found out what I lost. I lost my reflection. It's gone. August 12th. I feel really clear-headed for the first time in a while. It feels great to be out here. August 15th. Other hikers don't see me. Other hikers don't talk to me. Other hikers don't see the forest. Other hikers don't talk to the forest. I am forest. They are hiker. November 5th. Landon, Max, Cody, Zach. North, south, east, west. Landon, Max, Cody, Zach. Northeast, southwest, to west, to east. Landon, Max, Cody, Zach, North, Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, Landon, Max, Cody, Zach, drowned, crushed, drowned, foul, November 7th, safe, FRINs, roots, my roots, safe,